Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Mark Lavond, Certified Sexuality Educator and Supervisor, and Chair of the Education Certification Committee. This is a brief video on what reviewers are looking for in the review process for applications to be a Certified Sexuality Educator. So why is ASECT doing a video like this? Why are we trying to communicate about the better records that ASECT's trying to keep? It's in order to have organizational improvement, in order to say, hey, what types of errors do we commonly see in applications? We needed to keep better records so that we can grow as an institution. This video is attempting to address some of these issues that we've seen over the years. And so in applications, we want to focus on two main factors: organization of the documents, and then documentation of the CE hours and of professional working hours. We'll talk a little more about each of those in these next slides. So the ASECT application review process for educators is oftentimes submitted in a single PDF. ASECT is trying to get a more digital friendly upload portal. This would be really helpful for applicants to submit in select areas. It will be more helpful for reviewers to be able to see all these things in an order. But until then, we're still submitting them in a single PDF. And so one of the things that can help a reviewer make sense of someone's application is a template. And I've offered that. It should be able to be downloaded on the website that this video is posted on. And this template will have things like a cover page and a table of contents to describe where the reviewers would be able to find which aspects of the application. And then they would be followed by these large kind of pages or inserts so that when scrolling through a PDF, a reviewer would be able to see, oh, okay, during this section, this is where all of the information pertaining to that section of the application can be found. That can be really helpful for scrolling through large documents of 150, 300 pages when trying to decide whether an applicant meets the criteria. And then documentation. Clear documentation of all the requisite information on the website is pretty important for the application process or for the review process. You can find those on the Requirements for Sexuality Educator Certification website. If you were to read that and follow it pretty explicitly, that should be everything that you need. But to be fair, I understand that sometimes it can be a lot of information and maybe not clearly listed. Some of the things that are oftentimes like presented unclearly would be the 1,000 hours of professional working experience, the CE documentation, like transcripts, syllabi, course descriptions. I'll talk more about that in the next slide. The fieldwork or practicum experience of 100 hours. And then sometimes the supervision forms or letters of recommendation are not submitted effectively, or they're not submitted at all. So those are some things that we would need as reviewers, and then we would need to be able to find them easily, hence back to the organization piece. So let's look at about 3 common mistakes that happen. One of the things we were getting to do as the review committee is over the years, we've started to keep track of what these common mistakes were. And so we're requesting this documentation so that ASECT can see any patterns or things that show up. So the first common mistake is having missing materials. And the solution is to include those materials. And sometimes because the website is a little hard to follow, I've included a checklist here. I had the review committee take a look and they were like, yep, these all sound really good. Sometimes people would submit things and then not include their certificate of endorsement or the letter of endorsement from a professional colleague or a supervisor. All of those would be missing. And then we would have to reach back out to the applicant to say, hey, we're missing some information. Can you please submit that? This information was distilled directly from the Educator Certification Requirements page. And so you should be able to follow it pretty closely and have everything meet up there. Another common mistake is having vagueness or an omission of the 1,000 hours per year that's required to be certified as a sexuality educator. So what's the solution is to have these clearly marked. Sometimes people will submit these in things like a table of hours that they've worked, of contact hours and non-contact hours over the years. Sometimes they will be a description of their full-time job or a letter from the employer saying that this person has worked this amount of time. This is just a really important way for us to be able to see, okay, have those 1,000 hours been accrued? Sometimes in the history of how ASECT has operated, this process usually has come from assumptions that people are either working in academia or as a therapist, et cetera, et cetera. In the current gig economy, that type of information is a little harder to document. And so it may call for a longer table of hours or something like that. But people have presented these in a number of ways, but as long as it's clear to the reviewers that those 1,000 hours were met, then, you know, as long as it's written down somewhere and explained to the reviewer and they can find it in the application, that should suffice for letting them know how those hours were met. And another common mistake is lacking documentation, specifically for the CE hours. Having supporting documentation that demonstrates the CE hours count for the types that you all indicated on the application. Between the applicant and the supervisor, they've said, okay, which CEs count for which areas. Sometimes the review committee will need information because the title of the workshop may be vague and it may not be clear how it meets that criteria. What types of things then should you include? On the requirements page, they talk about under the application process and approval process, specifically sections D and E. They talk about syllabi, transcripts, attendance certificate, or what they call other credible evidence. This could be any type of information that you've gained as a person attending the workshop or that the organizer has supplied. This can be course descriptions. What are you going to look at in the workshop? Objectives from the workshop or workshop outlines. That can help the reviewers see, oh, okay, this workshop on Abortion 101 talked about ethics and you're counting it for ethics. We see that now. Versus, say, an Abortion 101 workshop that counts for only procedural and anatomical credits. To be clear, to help the reviewers understand how these credits are counting for those things. And documentation that can help with that can really speed up the process. All right, and because this was a short video, if you all have questions, there should be a link to a Google form where you can submit the questions. And then in about a month, so by May 20th, I will look at those questions and then I'll record another video and then the answer video will be forthcoming. Thank you so much. I look forward to your questions. I hope this was a little bit helpful. We should have those templates also available for download on, the template and the checklist available for download on the website that this video is posted on. All right. Thanks so much. Look forward to hearing from you all.